I was down the pub the other day and someone asked me about intergenerational wealth transfer. And I was prompted to think about that. I've thought about this a lot over the years. I spoke to this with my father about 30 years ago. And I think the first thing we've got to work out is how to discuss this without the politics of envy, because there are people in our community that are wealthy, generally because they've worked harder at productive things, and good on them for being wealthy. And what is wealth, and what do we do to manage that? You know, I think that in today's Australian society, there are quite a few people who have worked at pretty good jobs most of their life, and they will retire with their hand on $5 million worth of assets, you know, a property, and $2 or $3 million in super or investments. I don't consider that the sort of wealth that creates issues. It will go to their children, whatever's left over. Their children will use it for lifestyle things, one imagines, but probably not. Possibly their children will use it for productive things. But let's talk about, you know, those with $5 million and upwards. And, you know, we're told that 80,000 people have got super balances of over $3 million. I wouldn't think that the sort of wealth we're talking about is put away into super funds. So there are a lot of people who have done what the tax department has asked over the last 30 or 40 years and encouraged people to use superannuation to conserve their assets. I think it's been largely a less productive exercise than we could have, but this is what you get from short-term thinking government officials. But nonetheless, there are a lot of people with quite large sums in superannuation, and they should be encouraged to use that productively. Now, I want you to think about wealth. As like water in a tank. Now, this tank is owned by the government. All the government wealth or water is in that tank, and they have a hose on them. And this hose is held by government employees, government bureaucrats, Lala, Dinky, Ricky, Ticky and Pooh. I watch them with wry humour, wry sadness, I'm afraid. The bureaucrats, I mean, Gammon's Law. Now, this is not just some law that Edwin thought up. This was by a prominent European researcher many years ago. And he said that productive activity is subsumed by non-productive activity and even counterproductive bureaucratic activity. And we have, any of us who have worked tried to work with government departments have seen this. You know, state government bump into each other, they can't make decisions. Local government have these multiple rules and regulations that just make life so difficult for anyone trying to get something done. Why is this? Well, it's because the people that work in bureaucratic organisations really haven't got an understanding of what private enterprise does. Private enterprise, the hose that comes out of the private enterprise tank is very efficiently held. It is watered onto the trees and plants within the private enterprise land that they know will produce and need watering to get the best results. This hose is fought over, stumbled about like an episode from the Keystone Cops or the Muppets. And the water goes everywhere, they squirt each other, they fall over. It's most inefficient. Whereas private enterprise understands risk and reward. There are specialist people in here that understand that their risk in their particular enterprise, be it agriculture or building or mining, and they are willing to pull that risk on. And it becomes less because they're specialists in that field. If I was to go into a mining enterprise, it would be highly risky for me because I know nothing about mining. But if I was to go into other areas, it is less risky. So private enterprise, those people who are effective private enterprise, people who work hard, conscientious. And I was walking home the other day at 5:30 in the afternoon and called in on a friend of mine who's got an office just down the road. And everyone else had gone home, all the employees had gone home, you know, they'd all gone to the pub and gone home and rolling around the lawn. This guy was in his office and said, "Oh, Edwin, come on in, look at this. I bought a block out the road. I'm going to subdivide it. And look at all these blocks we got, you know, and the small blocks and the bigger blocks and the roads and, you know," and you think, you know, this lad is in for a world of pain, but he's willing to do it. And we need people like him for community amenity, and he should be rewarded. It's interesting to note that there is a 30% tax rebate for people who make films in Australia. I thought it would be much more effective to give people that produce houses for low-income people. Those developers who spend $10 or $15 million, give them a tax rebate. Let's say do it for 10 years, and if government gets it wrong, like government often does, but let's see, in 10 years' time it will disappear, it won't be a problem anymore and it will go away. And if it's right, well then we can revisit it in 10 years' time. So intergenerational wealth transfer, the transfer when these people die to the next generation, is less of a problem than really what they do with that wealth. How we encourage the wealthy people to use their wealth, because they are the best people to use it, they are the effective people. We need less things done by governments and more things done by private enterprise, and we need to encourage those people to transfer this wealth to be spent within Australia. You know, 24% of the money in Australian super funds is spent on American shares. Now I was astounded when I learned that, and it's a bit of a pity because the reason it's spent is not for any other reason, because it's the most cost-effective way. You know, it lowers risk, it spreads your risk amongst Australian shares, world shares and American shares. They are right to do it. But why not reduce the tax in Australia so that these people bring that money back and make jobs and amenity for Australians? The reason we've got the housing crisis is lack of planning. You know, the government trolls with their water hose have been fighting each other and falling over and squirting it on the wrong things for the last 30 years. Let private enterprise encourage them to bring their considerable wealth back to Australia to educate their children, the people who will inherit this wealth, to do good things for it. And that's what the intergenerational wealth transfer is not a problem. It is the problem of how governments ask and direct us to spend those funds in Australia.